we find Weiss waking up to a beautiful morning and... Well, that's one way to get wide awake.
We still have to unpack. And clean.
So up to it!
They begin to set up and decorate the room. Something's not right here.
We could ditch the beds and replace them with bunk beds!
I mean, it's organized? With that taken care of, it's time.
To class!
Yes, class. Now book it like you've never booked it before, or you'll lose your perfect attendance. There could be a reward for perfect attendance. So they make it to class, and this guy, Professor Port, lectures them on stuff we already know.
Hey, yeah.
Then he proceeds to tell his life story. In the meantime, Weiss is getting angry at RWBY for, what I assume, not paying attention and looking like an idiot.
So, who among you believes themselves to be the embodiment of these traits?
I do, sir.
Why do I get the feeling she's gonna be the volunteer for something?
Step forward and face your opponent.
On this week's episode of Grimlock. Gosh dang it. So, that's the end of that chapter. It was 5 minutes, and most of it was meh. Let's see if the follow-up chapter does any better.
Go Weiss! Fight well! Yeah, represent Team RWBY! RWBY, I'm trying to focus!
Hey, they're your teammates. They're cheering you on, trying to motivate you. I get that this is class, but is that so wrong? So she fights the Borbatusk, and she's actually struggling to fight it. Although this is a cramped classroom. RWBY continues to cheer Weiss, and even gives some advice. And how does Weiss respond?
Stop telling me what to do!
Naturally, she does exactly what RWBY says to do. After class...
What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be a leader, and all you've been so far is a nuisance. You've done nothing to earn your position. Back in the forest, you acted like a child, and you've only continued to do so.
I'm sorry. What? Back in the forest, you recognized that you all needed to work together regardless of your differences. So what if RWBY is the leader? Should that change any of what you said? Oh, and who was it that came up with the plan to defeat the Grimm in the forest? Oh yeah, RWBY.
Ozpin made a mistake.
Now that didn't seem to go very well.
Okay, do people just know when to conveniently be where they're probably needed at the exact best moment? So Weiss wanders off and encounters Professor Port. They talk about the class from earlier, but Port notices something wrong and lets Weiss speak her mind.
I think I should have been the leader of Team RWBY.
That's preposterous.
My thoughts exactly. So these conversations go back and forth, and we get some nice quips like this.
With all due respect, your exceptional skill on the battlefield is matched only by your poor attitude.
Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Oh! Oh my God!
And this.
I've made more mistakes than any man, woman, and child on this planet.
Oh, we'll get to that eventually. But these conversations serve to give RWBY and Weiss advice on how to perform in their team roles. For RWBY, it's to always be the best leader she can be, both on and off the battlefield. And for Weiss, it's to focus on what she has rather than what she doesn't, and to be the best person she can be. At the end of the episode, Weiss finds RWBY studying, offers to make RWBY some coffee, on the spot somehow, and leaves her to study. But not before saying this.
Hey, RWBY? Uh-huh. I always wanted bunk beds as a kid.
Aww, someone's opening up to the team. Overall, this two-parter isn't the best the volume has to offer. It further shows just how hateable Weiss can be. And while a hateable character doesn't always equate to a badly written character, it does make it hard for the viewer to really care for that character. And Weiss is one of the main four. We as the audience kinda need to care for her. And despite what Weiss says in the chapters, the first of this two-parter actually paints RWBY as an idiot. No idea if what they showed was just Weiss's imagination, but it really didn't help with RWBY's character. Its only saving grace was the ending, where both RWBY and Weiss gained wisdom for how to play their parts on the team. And while the ending banter felt a little rushed and a bit unnatural in the voice delivery, mainly Weiss, it's at least a start for both characters. But even with this ending, the two-parter in my eyes is the low point of the volume. Yes, even lower than the very next storyline that comes after. Now, this particular storyline is a bit controversial. Not because I would say it's bad, but because it deviates the focus away from the main 4 to focus on a singular character. For 4 chapters, the character in question is Jaune Arc, in the 2-part Jaune Dice and the 2-part Forever Fall. So, let's begin. We start with Jaune in combat against another student, who we've actually seen before. This is Cardin Winchester, leader of Team Cardinal. Jaune isn't doing so well against Cardin, and he dropped his sword only for it to be back in his hand. Anyway, it's in this fight that we learn how aura readings are displayed for an official tournament setting, which may be important in a later volume. Glinda tells Jaune he should consult his scroll, the mobile phone looking thing, during combat to take notice of his aura readings and strategize accordingly. That might be useful in a team-based mission where he can stand a distance to monitor his teammate's aura, but in a one-on-one match where every second counts, like what we just saw, using it is gonna be situational. Glinda also mentions something called the Vital Festival, which will involve a tournament where students from the other kingdoms will compete, hence the class the students just had. So she suggests the students train up, because those that participate will be representing Vale. We jump to teams RWBY and Juniper having lunch, where Nora is being Nora.
We were surrounded by Earth's side.
They were Beowulfs.
Dozens of them!
2 of them.
Jaune, on the other hand, is looking down in the dumps today, and the other students take note of this.
Guys, I'm fine. Seriously, look.
The students take a glance at Cardin picking on a Faunus girl, her name is Velvet by the way, and Pyrrha mentions that he's been picking on Jaune as well since school started.
Oh, please. Name one time he's bullied me. No, come on! Huh? Ah. What? No, wait, get me out of here. Please, don't.
Are you seeing their point, Jaune? His friends tell him they can help, but what does Jaune respond with?
Guys, really, it's fine. Besides, it's not like he's only a jerk to me. He's a jerk to everyone.
And that automatically makes it okay for Cardin to keep bullying people? In the next chapter, the students are in yet another class, this time with this guy, Dr. Bartholomew Oobleck, who is giving a lecture on something called the Faunus War while being high on caffeine. Also this. This here is awesome. Remember it for next time. As for the Faunus War, all you really need to know is the majority of the Faunus population moved to a place called Menagerie, though there are still Faunus living in other parts of the world, even in Vale, as we'll see in the next volume. So, why is Oobleck bringing all this up?
Now, have any among you been subjugated or discriminated because of your Faunus heritage? Dreadful, simply dreadful. Remember, students, it is precisely this kind of ignorance that breeds violence.
Well said, Oobleck. I couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, Jaune is still snoozing in class, giving Cardin an opportunity to get Jaune to make a fool of himself.
The answer... The advantage...
Wait, pause that. Blake and Pyrrha are sitting here, and Jaune is sitting here. So why does the shot of Oobleck have...
Does not compute! Does not compute! Does not compute!
So yeah, Jaune messes up the answer. Oobleck asks Cardin for his thoughts on the subject.
Well, I know it's a lot easier to train an animal than a soldier.
Racist! And Pyrrha would agree.
What? You got a problem?
No, I have the answer. It's night vision.
Blake further explains what happened as a result of the Faunus' night vision in the battle, and further pisses Cardin off. And Jaune laughs, resulting in this.
You and Mr. Arc could both see me after class for additional readings.
And by additional readings, he means scolding them first for struggling in his class since day one.
History is important, gentlemen. If you can't learn from it, you're destined to repeat it.
Oobleck gives them an assignment, and they leave.
You know, I really will break his legs.
Please do. So Pyrrha gets an idea and takes Jaune to the roof for some... alone time. It's not what you think, but it does feel the ship. Kinda.
Jaune, I know you're having a difficult time in class.
You've gotta be kidding me. But yeah, Pyrrha offers to help Jaune by doing some late night training.
You made it to Beacon. That speaks volumes of what you're capable of.
Yeah, about that.
I wasn't really accepted into Beacon. I lied. I got my hands on some fake transcripts, and I lied.
Wow. So why did he do it? Because Jaune wants to be like his father, grandfather, and those before him. To be a hero. Pyrrha still offers to help, but Jaune is tired of being the damsel in distress.
Leave me alone. okay?
If that's what you think is best.
Aw, no, Pyrrha. Jaune, you frickin' blew it. Also, Cardin.
Please don't tell anyone.
Jaune, come on. I'd never rat at a friend like that. And the way I see it, as long as you're there for me when I need you, we'll be friends for a long time.
This is not gonna end pretty, is it? In the next chapter, Jaune hasn't been coming back to the dorm, and his teammates wonder where he's at, considering there's a field trip the next day.
I'm sure our leader knows exactly what he's doing.
And of course, Jaune is outside the room listening in, only for Ruby to find him. She asks him where he's been, to which Jaune replied with how he screwed up.
I'm a failure.
Nope. You're a leader now, Jaune. You're not allowed to be a failure. You know why?
Because...
Because it's not just about you anymore. You've got a team now, Jaune. We both do. And if we fail, then we'll just be bringing them down with us. We have to put our teammates first and ourselves second.
She's so awesome! As he's about to go into the room, Jaune gets a call on his scroll from Cardin telling him to get some rapier wasps with really big stingers. Again, this is not gonna end pretty, is it? Well, it's the next day. Time for that field trip. The students arrive at a forest called Foreverfall. Their assignment? To collect red sap from the trees within the forest. Since Cardin had forced Jaune into his services against his will, Jaune has to go with Cardin instead of his team. And of course, Team Cardinal is just lounging around while Jaune gets them the samples. 6 of them, instead of 4. Why? So Cardin can get revenge on Pyrrha for yesterday. Also, those wasps. I knew this wasn't going to end well. The wasps are attracted to anything sweet. So Cardin tells Jaune to throw a jar of honey at Pyrrha, or else he'll tell Glinda the truth about how Jaune got into Beacon.
No.
What did you say?
No!
Oh.
Naturally, since Team Cardinal is a bunch of bullies, they beat him up.
I don't care what you do to me, but you are not messing with my team.
You think talk like that makes you tough?
You think hurting him proves him wrong? Cardin punches Jaune again, but this time it didn't work because Aura. Team Cardinal proceeds to continue their attack on Jaune, but...
I'll be your training buddy!
Ah, so that's the significance of that exchange. And wouldn't you know it, it's there because of the red sap on Cardin's armor. The rest of Team Cardinal flees, screaming that an Ursa has Cardin. Knowing that Jaune is with them, Pyrrha, Ruby, and Weiss go to save them while the others get Glinda for help. Meanwhile, the Ursa is beating Cardin senselessly until he gets some unexpected help. Of course, since Jaune isn't the best fighter, he gets beat up too. He realizes that his aura is low. Again, I still think it's situational. But Jaune still rushes in towards the beast anyway. Not wanting to see him get shredded to pieces, Pyrrha decides to use her semblance of polarity to control Jaune's metal shield to block the Ursa's incoming attack so that Jaune can slice its head clean off. Ruby and Weiss suggest they go tell everyone what just happened, but Pyrrha suggests they keep it a secret. Jaune helps Cardin up. Cardin looks very impressed by Jaune, but Jaune makes it clear to him to never attempt to hurt his friends again. Judging from the look on Cardin's face, he's probably going to keep to that. During that evening, Pyrrha finds Jaune back on the roof. Jaune apologizes to her for being a jerk and pushing her away when she was just trying to help him, and he asks her to help him train to be a better fighter. Pyrrha, being the nice person she is, forgives him. But the training...
Hey!
Your stance is all wrong. You need to be wider and lower to the ground. Let's try that again.
And the ship's fuel is rekindled. Jaune Dice and Foreverfall is... okay. Looking back on it now, it's just average, but I still don't find it to be bad. I still stand by that the badge and the burden is the weakest part of Volume 1. See, unlike that two-parter, I actually cared for what happened to the character at the forefront, that being Jaune, who I'll go over in more detail in the final thoughts. But I thought he was handled okay for the most part. Yes, it's a bit weird that this filler arc is the only thing in Volume 1, save for maybe the last 2 chapters, that actually has plot. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it fleshes out the focus characters. We also get more of a look into the other things the students are learning at Beacon, seeing that not every class is about combat. But with all that being said, Jaune Dice and Forever Fall aren't without their flaws. Cardin is about as hateable as Weiss, if not more, but unlike Weiss, who actually learns from her flaws, sort of, we still got more of Weiss to see in this volume, Cardin is just a stereotypical juvenile delinquent that no one really likes, and no one is doing anything to actually stop his bullying tirade despite detesting his actions. What's worse is he isn't really redeemed in these chapters. Yeah, the look on his face toward the end of Forever Fall showed that he won't be trouble anymore, well, at least for Jaune, but he did absolutely nothing to make me like him. Even worse yet is the fact that we don't really get to see him again in a major part of the story after these chapters. And the other downside is the last part of Forever Fall. While Jaune trying to defend Cardin from the Ursa was a nice moment for him, his victory over the Ursa wasn't even his doing. It was Pyrrha using her semblance to control Jaune's weaponry to make him hit his target precisely as opposed to Jaune doing it himself, making this victory feel like he didn't actually earn it, even though he did deserve to win. But for the most part, Jaune Dice and Forever Fall have good highs, bad lows, but to me, it's overall an okay ride. Way better than the Badge and the Burden, that's for sure. And thus we arrive at the two-part finale of Volume 1, The Stray and Black and White. We join our heroines as the town is preparing for the Vital Festival, and Weiss is being very cheerful about it, more cheerful than she usually is. They come to the docks, expecting some students arriving from the kingdom of Vacuo, but then RWBY spots a crime scene, and the team decides to check it out. RWBY asks what happened, and, just like at the start of the volume, it's a robbery. But who could have done it? Two of the officers speculate that it could be the White Fang, that group mentioned back in Chapter 1. Weiss expresses her distaste for the White Fang.
What an awful bunch of degenerates.
The White Fang is hardly a bunch of psychopaths. They're a collection of misguided faunus.
RWBY also speculates that it could have been Torchwick. That does make sense given the end of Chapter 8.
That still doesn't change the fact that the White Fang are a bunch of scum. Those faunus only know how to lie, cheat, and steal.
Okay, I get that we've established that the White Fang is
very misguided,
but I think that's getting a bit racist there. You were doing so great, Weiss. Don't go back to being a jerk.
Hey, stop that faunus!
It seems she's not the only one being discriminatory. We cut to a boy who apparently decided to hitch a ride on a nearby ship.
You no good stowaway.
What kind of sound was that? The boy runs away from the police and eventually runs past our team. And in that moment, the stars aligned as destiny brought these two to one another this day, birthing yet another ship that...
Well, Weiss, you wanted to see the competition. And there it goes.
And so, our team runs after the Faunus boy, only for Weiss to bump into this red-headed girl. And the Faunus boy has gotten away. Now about the girl Weiss bumped into.
Salutations!
Are you okay?
I'm wonderful.
Do you want to get up?
Yes.
Is she gonna be okay? I think Weiss bumping into her did something. This is Penny. They all exchange names, Weiss apologizes for bumping into her, and they leave. Awkward. The team goes back to finding the boy.
Now, where did that faunus riffraff run off to?
What did you call me?
Great, Weiss. Now you're discriminating redheads. Actually, Penny came in response to what RWBY called her, which was...
Friend. Am I really your friend?
Okay, this is the most awkward the show has gotten.
Are you sure you didn't hit your head?
Speaking of Yang asking questions, she asks Penny what she's doing in Vale, and Penny responds, saying she's gonna compete in the Vital Festival tournament.
You hardly look the part,
says the girl wearing a dress.
It's a combat skirt. Yeah.
Wow, those two have gotten along pretty well.
If you're here for the tournament, does that mean you know that monkey-tailed rapscallion?
Oh yeah, because clearly a random girl in town who just happens to be from another kingdom would know a random Faunus boy who stowed away on a ship. Blake has had enough of Weiss's racist remarks toward the Faunus boy, saying that he's still a person.
Would you like me to stop referring to the trash can as a trash can? Or this lamppost as a lamppost?
Both of which are inanimate objects. The Faunus boy is not Weiss. It's not that hard to figure out the flaw in your logic. So Weiss and Blake are arguing about the matter. Night falls, and they're still arguing, leading to this.
You're discriminatory! I'm a victim!
Well, this just got pretty real all of a sudden. Weiss explains that her family has been suffering due to the White Fang's crimes against them, with people connected to the Schnee family and their dust company either having disappeared or been killed.
You want to know why despise the White Fang? It's because they're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers.
Well, maybe we were just tired of being pushed around.
Wait! Come back!
Way to go, Weiss. Way to go. Blake runs out to the courtyard, and upon seeing the statue, removes her bow to reveal that she is in fact a faunus. And then...
I knew you would look better without the bow.
Morning arrives, and Blake hasn't returned. The rest of Team RWBY go to search for Blake, with Weiss questioning if Blake's truly their teammate after what she said. But they realize they need to find Blake regardless. Meanwhile, Blake and the Faunus boy, named Sun Wukong, are having tea and talking about the White Fang. Sun detests the White Fang and their actions, but Blake, to Sun's surprise, says that she was once a member of the White Fang. She gives a brief history of the White Fang and how she used to believe and follow their original cause. But after they changed to more violent measures, resorting to fear as a means to gain equality, she left. Now she strives to be a huntress, disguising herself with her bow. Meanwhile, the rest of Team RWBY is still trying to find Blake. Weiss suggests they report to the police, but RWBY and Yang are opposed to that idea and think they should hear Blake out.
I think when we hear it, you'll all realize I was right.
And I think Weiss's hair looks wonderful today.
Creeper. Oh, man.
Penny asks what they're up to, and Yang tells her they're looking for Blake.
Oh, you mean the Faunus girl.
How?
The cat ears?
What cat ears? She wears a bow.
She does like tuna a lot.
It's funny because Blake is a cat. Anyway, Penny offers to help, but RWBY says they'll be fine on their own. And Weiss and Yang have ditched RWBY. Great. Now RWBY has to deal with the creeper. Aw, man. We return to Blake and Sun. Blake doesn't believe the White Fang are up to the robbery from before because they never needed that much dust before. Sun says, in an awkwardly worded way, man, I'm saying awkward a lot in this review, the only way for them to know the truth is to go to a place where another robbery will strike. Blake doesn't know where another robbery could happen, but Sun recalls hearing some guys on the ship mentioning a shipment of dust from the Kingdom of Atlas, where Weiss and her family's dust company are from, coming into Vale. A huge shipment, in fact. Weiss and Yang aren't having much luck finding Blake. Weiss says she does care if they find Blake, but isn't looking forward to what she'll say. Meanwhile, Penny is playing 20 questions with RWBY regarding the situation with Blake.
I don't have a lot of friends, but if I did, I would want them to talk to me about things.
Penny, you aren't wrong, but I gotta know, why do you sound so robotic? Night has come, and Blake and Sun find the dust shipment, which is indeed from the Schnee Dust Company. Suddenly, an airship arrives on the scene and lands. A man steps out of the ship, and upon seeing his attire, the truth is confirmed. It's the White Fang. But they aren't alone.
We're not exactly the most inconspicuous bunch of thieves at the moment, so why don't you animals try to pick up the pace?
So, this is what Torchwick meant about needing more men. Blake is unsure about this since the White Fang wouldn't work with a human, and proceeds to rush in to figure this out. She manages to grab Torchwick and reveals to the White Fang members that she's one of them, a Faunus. She asks why they're aiding Torchwick.
The White Fang and I are going in on a joint business venture together.
And to make matters worse, more ships arrive. Blake, this probably wasn't a good idea to just go in alone. Torchwick fires his cane to break free from Blake, but the explosion gets the attention of RWBY and Penny. And so begins the fight with Blake and Sun versus Torchwick and the White Fang. And of course, it's eye candy. Sun uses a staff that can separate into nunchaku that are also guns. That is freaking awesome! Torchwick fires at a suspended container, causing it to fall. He's about to shoot at Sun until RWBY arrives.
Oh, hello, Red! Isn't it past your bedtime?
It was nighttime the first time you encountered RWBY, remember? Penny is with RWBY and...
RWBY, are these people your friends?
Really not the time, Penny. Also, Torchwick had Sun at gunpoint. How is that friendly? Anyway, this stupid question causes RWBY to lose focus, giving Torchwick an easy shot. I think you just got Penny pissed off, Torchwick.
I'm combat ready!
She just ejected a slew of blades from her... backpack? Is this a backpack, or is she actually a robot? Oh, whatever. This fight scene is glorious. Seeing her manipulate those blades kinda like Nu or Lambda or Mew from BlazBlue. She's even able to deflect projectile attacks and even... I'll take 10. So Penny is able to stop Torchwick and the White Fang from flying away with the dust, and they retreat. Afterwards, Yang and Weiss arrive at the scene. And it's the moment of truth. Weiss says to Blake that, in the 12 hours they've been trying to find her, she's had some time to think about it. She's made her choice. She doesn't care that Blake was a member of the White Fang. But
the next time something this big comes up, you'll come to your teammates. And not someone else.
Weiss, you make a good point, but Sun isn't exactly... You know what? Forget it. The important thing is Weiss handled this pretty well. I guess you really have grown. RWBY notices that Penny has disappeared.
You should know better than to go running around in a strange city.
I know, sir.
Meanwhile, Ozpin is watching the live feed of the scene where RWBY was, and gets a message from someone named Crow. Wait, didn't RWBY say her uncle's name was Crow? Anyway, Crow sends a message saying the Queen has pawns, whatever that means. And then the credits roll. But after the credits, we return to Torchwick after he escaped the scene from before, entering a warehouse. And he's met with the mystery woman.
All we ask is a little cooperation.
Volume 1 is an awkward, outdated piece of work, and yet I still found enjoyment in it. I believe it's retained its style and charm, and still think it's worth a watch for those new to the series. It has aged okay in some aspects, but poorly in others. Thankfully, later volumes improve on Volume 1's shortcomings, but that's to be expected from a show's first outing. Let's talk first about those shortcomings. The obvious one from Volume 1 is, of course, the animation. Fight scenes notwithstanding, the animation in Volume 1 is, to put it bluntly, not good. Movement feels stiff and unnatural, and there are quite a few transitions that show a different animation than the previous shot, disrupting flow. While some locations are detailed okay, other locations aren't. And if you've been paying attention to large crowds, you may have noticed all the blacked out character models that make the main cast stick out in a crowd, referred to in the Volume 2 production diary as the Shadow People. While the character designs are very nice, the Shadow People make it easy to spot which characters will be important. Another downside to Volume 1 is the voice acting. Now, these voices do get better as the series progresses. If you compare how RWBY sounds in Volume 1 to how she sounds in Volume 6, there's a major difference and overall improvement. But starting out, some of the voices don't sound very natural, which I blame poor voice direction. You could be the most talented voice artist ever, but that won't really matter in the long run if the direction isn't great. And I wouldn't say all of the voices in the volume were bad, just some bad direction in the delivery of the lines, like with some of RWBY's responses to Yang, and some of Weiss's lines in The Badge and the Burden, just to name a few. But I'd argue the biggest problem with Volume 1 is the plot. Or rather, a lack of one. The early parts of RWBY get flack for having bad writing, and this is a big factor in that. I mean, the show establishes itself in the first 8 chapters pretty well, and shows that there is a threat to deal with, but after Chapter 8, it's just filler that doesn't really contribute to any overarching plot. And when we get something that would be considered an overarching plot, it's the very end of the volume, and there was no build-up to that ending. Not to mention that a good chunk of the volume is dedicated to a character that isn't even part of the main team. Look, I enjoyed John Dice in Forever Fall, and fleshing out the supporting cast is important. But we had 4 episodes that were, again, filler, and were dedicated to Jaune, which had great development for him, but we only had 2 episodes dedicated to Weiss and her struggle of coping with not being the team leader. And the payoff for that filler 2-parter was kind of abrupt and could have used a little more time in fleshing out. Not to mention maybe some fleshing out of some of the other characters too. Remember when I said that thing about balancing the character growth and development in my Ruby Rose video? Yeah, that. And as a result of all of these things combined, we get a season that feels disjointed. I understand that this was the first season of RWBY, but when you look at later volumes and see how much better they handled plot, voice direction, and animation, it shows. So yes, there are many problems with Volume 1, but that's not to say all of it was bad. There's still some good to come out of it. Like I said, the character designs are fantastic. It's amazing how, despite the limited nature of Volume 1, Rooster Teeth still managed to create distinct and interesting character designs. Each one is very recognizable. I also gotta give Rooster Teeth props for the weapon types. They were all varied, from RWBY's scythe to Yang's gauntlets to even Torchwick's cane, and of course, Sun's nunchaku gun staff thing. And I guess while I'm on the topic of weapon types, let's talk about the fight scenes. Though Volume 1's animation isn't great, the fight scenes still deliver. The fast-paced action, the choreography, and even the teamwork dynamic were all executed very well, and what we got were fights that were memorable and pleasant to watch. And let's not forget the music. The vocal tracks from Jeff and Casey Lee Williams define the musical feel of the show. The intense rock music with the fast-paced action of the show's fight scenes just works so well, and it just keeps getting better and better with each new volume. They really do spoil us with these boppin' tunes. And then we have the characters. While there wasn't too much focus on character in this volume, the personalities of each of the main cast were still pretty good. They were all diverse, so seeing all of these personalities together gave life to the show and made it not boring. We have Ruby, the socially awkward yet positive optimistic prodigy. Yang, the big sister. Weiss, the spoiled rich brat. Blake, the quiet mysterious one with a dark past. Jaune, the inexperienced, also socially awkward kid who's thrust into the position of leadership. Pyrrha, the expert fighter who's also a sweetheart. Nora, the goofball. And Rin, the guy that's just there. Trust me, he'll have his moment. Eventually. A great selection of personalities, but again, hardly any of them had much character focus this volume. Except for 3, Blake, Jaune, and Weiss. I'll start with Blake since her brief character focus came at the end. She's kind of a weird one. Throughout the volume, she didn't have too much to say. In fact, at the start, she wanted to be left alone, but eventually she would have to work with a team, which she seemed to gladly take part in. This sudden change in tune seems off, but then we learn that she's a Faunus and was once a member of the White Fang. As a Faunus, all she wants is equality with humans, which is why she joined the White Fang in the first place. But once the White Fang turned into pretty much a terrorist group, she wanted no part of it and got out, finding a new life as a huntress in training at Beacon, disguised as a human. Perhaps that's why she was abruptly willing to interact with her new team, even though she didn't show signs of wanting to interact with anyone at all. Because now, she has something to fill the void that was her past life with the White Fang. Something that could possibly help her achieve her goal of equality with humans. Now on to Jaune. At the start, he was, as he said himself, a lovable idiot. And he kinda still is. But he was also a cowardly, inexperienced kid that seemed to have no business being at Beacon. And that's because he didn't. He basically lied his way into Beacon. That in itself is honestly pretty impressive. But he did it because he was tired of being deadweight to everyone and wanted to be the hero like his family before him. I think that's why he tried so hard to not show any weakness. Through his own idiocy and Cardin's constant bullying and demands, he remained strong, even if he didn't like it. His heart was in the right place, but unfortunately this also resulted in Jaune kinda closing himself off from his friends, reaching a low point when he refused Pyrrha's offer to help him train. But once he realized what was important, Jaune didn't care what happened to him so long as no harm befell one of his friends. So he did the right thing and stood up to Cardin, and to show that he was no longer a coward, even went so far as to protect Cardin in the Ursa attack, because it was the right thing and the hero thing to do. The only downside I can see in Jaune's character in this volume is he didn't exactly earn his success on his own. Both the unlocking of his aura and his victory against the Ursa were all Pyrrha's doing. I believe he definitely deserved all of this, but it would have been nice if he actually gained these successes by earning it through his own doing, rather than having someone else do it for him. And lastly, we turn to Weiss. If it sounded like I was being very harsh towards Weiss throughout this whole thing, that's because I was. When I watched RWBY for the first time, I absolutely hated Weiss with a passion. It's not that she was a bad character, but because she was so unlikable throughout the entirety of Volume 1, combined with the fact that she was a part of the main team, it was really hard for me to give a crap about what happened to her. She was a brat that was completely full of herself and treated everyone as inferior. And if you were a Faunus, then she'll go full-on racist. It was honestly disgusting just how hateable Weiss was in Volume 1. Which is sad, because we clearly see in Volume 1 that she can stop being a selfish brat and actually be a kind and caring human being. She put aside her pride and accepted RWBY as the team leader, even going so far as to offer RWBY a cup of coffee to keep her awake while she studies. And at the end of the volume, she reconciles with Blake, not giving a crap that her teammate was once in the very White Fang that she despises so much. Because in the end, she cares for her teammate, and will be there for her when something is wrong. Though, while I did praise Weiss for handling this pretty well, her pot-shot at Sun at the end was a bit excessive and unnecessary. But thankfully, Weiss's good nature only goes up from here. In conclusion, Volume 1 may be a heavily flawed season, but the good that it does bring is worth a watch. The animation may be abysmal when compared to later volumes, but it's at least still pretty to look at, especially with the character designs and those fight scenes. The majority of the characters may not have had much here, but at least their personalities will keep you invested and not bored. And though the plot is non-existent, that's not to say there isn't a story to tell and not be engaged in. I mean, it's only Volume 1 after all, there's still plenty more to come. I'm ChaosKey4013, and next time, we'll see just what kind of improvements the show tries to achieve as we enter Volume 2. See you guys then.